not got a household collection, and it's for recycled materials, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think the challenge we've got in the UK is most households actually have a collection for recycling. They've got that collection. So what you're almost doing is you're almost making it more difficult for.
Hi everybody, Gavin Coyle. I'm the Gaffer. I'm back again with a brilliant guest. Alasdair Meldrum is in Scotland, and we're going to be talking all things waste related. This man has a passion for waste, and we want to talk about the construction industry in terms of how waste is being managed, and also how it's being not managed. And I'm really looking forward to getting in and talking to this guy because he's an absolute geek when it comes to waste. I hope he doesn't mind me saying so. Alasdair,
I've been
welcome.
called worse.
Welcome to I'm the Gaffer. We got you. We got you eventually. So you're the managing director of Albion Environmental, which is obviously your own business. Tell us a bit about that. Tell us a bit about your background, Alasdair, just for the listeners and followers.
Yep. Thank you for having me on. So, Alasdair Meldrum, as you said, Albion Environmental. So I started Albion Environmental in 2002 from effectively my bedroom, and gradually over the time we grew and developed. So we provide consultancy and training primarily for the waste management sector. So any waste facilities, whether that's composting sites, recycling plants, skip hire companies, any of these sort of customers, we try and deal with their problems, both in terms of sort of consultancy support and training. So in terms of background before that, I ran landfill sites for 5 years. So we handled probably about half a million tons of waste a year. So certainly know that waste never stops. It keeps flowing. It's lucky if it stops on Christmas Day. It's a continuation, and the sector's changed. I've been in the sector for, dare I say, probably about 35 years, I think, which I used to have slides doing presentations for students where I said over 20 years, and then I suddenly realised it was over 30 years.
Yeah,
which makes me feel old now, but never mind.
You were a landfill manager as well, weren't you, in a previous life?
Yeah. No, so I started off interesting enough. I trained at university as a environmental health officer, and my choices were doing environmental health at a council, and as part of that, you had to do a 50-week, 2-week practical course, and I actually taught skiing in the winter and windsurfing in the summer as my summer jobs. So most other students did their practical work during their holidays at uni. I went and did things I enjoyed. And then when I came out of uni, I actually struggled to get a job within a council. And I had an opportunity to join a landfill company or a council. Council job was paying much more. I think it was paying about 13.5 grand at the time. My job with Shanks and McEwen was offering 8.5 grand plus a wee van, a wee Ford Fiesta van. And my lecturer was like, take the Shanks and McEwen one because you'll never get that opportunity again. And he was probably right. So for that company, I travelled the country and did what was called environmental monitoring, looking after landfill sites. That's looking after gas emissions, the liquid, the leachate that comes out the sites, checking groundwater, checking surface water. And as a learning experience, it was amazing, just going around these sites and just soaking up knowledge from from the machine driver to the supervisor to the foreman, just learning what their challenges were and what their job involved. So great opportunity.
Yeah, I remember one because I'm based in Ireland, and an actual landfill went on fire one year where I think it took them a couple of days to put that fire out.
Well, they're pretty challenging. If they do go on fire, they're pretty challenging. So quite often, so a surface fire in the landfill's not that challenging because you just get it out by conventional meal. Quite often it's by smothering rather than water or whatever. But if it gets what we'll call deep-seated, so landfill sites will produce methane gas, and effectively what ends up happening is the methane gas is what's burning rather than the waste that's burning, and they're very, very hard to get out. And quite often that's caused by most of these sites will be drawing off the methane and generating electricity. But if you overdraw, if you draw too much, if you're too greedy, you then draw air into the site. A composting type reaction sets up, and you actually overheat the waste, and then it spontaneously combusts. And if you get a deep sea to fire, you're in for the long haul.
Yeah, I think it could have been even a week before they put that fire out. Like, it was crazy. Look, you're the right man in the right place to talk to about construction and waste. Let's get into it. You know, what's the problem with construction, and how construction companies are managing or mismanaging their waste?
Well, I think most companies think they're doing quite well with how they manage the waste, and in terms of waste management, we're meant to apply what we call the waste hierarchy. So the waste hierarchy is try not to produce the waste in the first place. Try not to do it, and if you do it, then can you reuse that material? So you've got some off-spec bricks on a site, can you then use it and under a path or whatever, that type of approach. And then the next step after that is recycling. And quite often what companies focus on is on the recycling bit. They don't focus on that upper level. So simple things like plasterboard sheets come in one size. So why don't you design the room for multiples of the one size of plasterboard? So then you don't have any offcuts, or that type of thing. I don't know, that sounds really simple, but that type of thinking, where you're actually cutting down in that waste that's been produced in the first place.
But is that not a manufacturing problem as opposed to the construction company themselves?
Well, I suppose that's the challenge. It's all, whether you're a household or whether you're a construction company. Ultimately, we're consumers, and the waste is almost being foisted on us by the producers. So I totally agree that producers have to take a bit of responsibility for producing the waste, but I suppose where the construction companies can sort of think about what they're building and how they can use things more sensibly. So an example, which is maybe an old example. If you remember back when you got brick delivered to a site, it used to be delivered in pallets. So every site you had loads of pallets sitting there. So what they did was they put the fork pockets in, the wire banded them, and they delivered them like that. But if the construction company never had a laydown area that was hardcore and it was sitting in the mud, what happened to that bottom tier of bricks? The bricky would say, "I'm not using them because they're dirty." So you're solving one problem and creating another problem.
No, but like I really wanted to get you on the show because I do see all these fancy policies and fancy documents, and even to the point of people getting the 45 or the 14,001 standard. But then when you go on site, you go like, geez, like I've seen the Rolls Royce of paperwork, but it doesn't actually transfer to site. And I'm not saying that's right across the board. Like, there's some very good companies that do really good work in this area, but I do still think that we're behind the curve. Like, I don't think we're there in terms of managing waste. Would you agree with that?
No,
In
not at
general
all.
terms,
Not at all. Not at all. I think the challenge is, I think everybody thinks the waste companies can sort the problem out, but the reality is, if you fill up a typical construction skip with a mix of waste, it's actually really hard for a skip company to segregate that out into its component parts. It's time consuming. They pull out the wood, they pull out the cardboard, they pull out the inerts, and so on. There's a lot of work involved in that, and I think we could be a bit smarter and a bit more sensible of how we segregate waste for company, and that's fine. Some larger sites with a bigger footprint, they can put in a skip for waste, or wood waste. They can put in a skip for scrap. They can do all these different things, but it's these sites that have got a really tight fit in terms of space. They've not got that capacity, and then what they're relying on is the waste contractor to try and effectively sort out the mess and if you like, get some value out of the material. And it's challenging because there's lots of rules. I put up a post on the Rubbish Talk TikTok about plasterboard and skips. Plasterboard has been banned from landfills since 2009 in the UK, and the two skips I took photos of were full of plasterboard. Well, so effectively, these skips will be going to a waste transfer station. That operator will be trying to salvage what he can, because the whole of waste management in the UK is based on avoiding landfill because of the landfill tax. So if you can segregate out your wood and get that away for maybe get £10 a tonne revenue. You get your inerts way for a few quid a tonne. Anything that avoids that 100 and I can't remember the landfill tax price, £132 a tonne, I think it is at the moment. Anything that avoids that, that's what they're going to do. So the plasterboard should be segregated, and then basically what they do is shred down the plasterboard, get the gypsum, and reuse the gypsum. So it's not 100% recycled, but it's we're getting the value of the material. Reason it's banned from landfill is it produces hydrogen sulfide, which is a really serious asphyxiant. It's fatal at really low concentrations. So there are landfill sites we can't go into without a personal gas monitor. That alarm is set to alarm if it detects hydrogen sulfide, and that's what causes, quite often you hear about landfills in the news about odours. Quite often the odour is coming from hydrogen sulfide because we've disposed of plasterboard into these sites. So there's things like that that legislation's been in since 2009, and I walk out the street and there's two skips in air with plasterboard in them, and it's all mixed through the waste. So we're almost, the construction industry is almost making it hard for the waste industry. But what's happening is there's lots of legislation sitting on top of this that government's driving and are putting in, that's making it really hard for the construction company and the waste company as well. So, to me, I think we need to be a bit smarter working together to, make everybody's job a bit easier, because we know ourselves the cost of a skip is going up and up and up. And part of that is down to the complexity of handling it.
But I like, because I'm going to plead ignorance in this space, but I do think that there's a lack of education in terms of where that skip is going and what happens after when the skip leaves the site. Like I know from when I was on the sites, I didn't really care. We were more anxious to get the truck driver to get the bloody skip off the site and get out and out of our way, as opposed to where's it going.
The constant refrain when I ran skips was, "We need this skip away tomorrow morning." That was the only instruction. We need it away. It's getting in the way.
It's still the case.
And that's a valid, that's a valid thing. But I suppose what I would say is, if there's construction companies out there that use a lot of skips, talk to your local skip contractor. They'll show you around the site. Make an appointment, get to see around. They'll show you what they're trying to do, and what you might do is understand a bit better the challenges they've got. And there's probably really simple things you can do. So, for example, using the plasterboard example, strip out the building, do whatever you're doing, and then put your plasterboard on the top. And then what the skip company will do is take that plasterboard off, and then they'll go and recycle the rest of the stuff. So there's simple things, but that's that work. There is a bit of an attitude with waste. It's like, it's not my problem. It's the skip hires company. It's and we're not magicians.
No,
we can't magically.
Yeah,
I waste.
We were involved with I'm not going to say the name of the company, but like the hard workers on the line, picking on the line. Oh my God, how those people do that job on a day-to-day basis. They're like heroes. And people are dumping asbestos and stuff like that, and these people have no awareness that these hard-working people are here every day in hot conditions and during the summer and stuff like that, picking through waste, and potentially putting themselves at massive risk in terms of needles and whatever else coming through the line. Like I think there is a lack of education in terms of, there's a bit of work to be done in the waste industry for them to sort of let's have a campaign to sort of make people more aware of what these hard workers are doing every day, in terms of, it's easy for us just to get a teleporter and dump everything into the skip, but someone has to pick that.
Totally. That's why we started, just to plug I'm not saying a competitor podcast, but that's why I started Rubbish Talk as a podcast. And it was really that what the waste industry is very good at doing is talking about the problems to the waste industry. We're not very good at talking about the problems to the wider sector and just doing that education piece. So there's a huge challenge out there. How do we educate people? And there is very definitely an attitude of, it's just waste, they'll sort it, and that to me is, if you produce waste, you should be taking ownership of that waste, and you should be making sure, or trying not to produce as much as you can, And once you produce it, you should be making sure that goes to the right home and it's been treated properly. And there's a legal duty of care to do that, but quite often companies don't take that responsibility on.
No, but there always seems to be waste. Only seems to work when there's a carrot approach put in front of people. Did you
Oh,
notice that?
all the scrap gets segregated for some reason.
Damn right it does. Damn right it does. But I'm just thinking, there's a re-return. I don't know if I use and have you got the re-return voucher scheme in the UK? Have you got that going up and running as well in Ireland? Anyway, you can bring your plastic bottles when you're doing your shopping, and you can and then it gives you back a voucher that you can use in the shop.
No, that's not in the UK at the moment, but there are plans to. But the challenge with that in the UK is a lot of council service is already collecting that material. So by including what we've called a deposit return scheme, I can't remember what it's called in Southern Ireland. Yeah. So by including that, you're almost making it harder. So if I've got a bottle, I put it in my recycling bin, the council collects that and takes it away. Now, if we get the DRS, I'm going to have to take that along to the supermarket to get my 20p back. Because if I put it in my recycling bin, I'm not going to get my 20p. So
no, you're not going to get your 20p. So, but the incentive is that you're when you buy your bottle of water or whatever it is, you're paying that tax within that water, within that bottle. So you want that money back. So actually, this is the truth. There's people actually pulling bottles out of bins. Like if you come to visit Ireland, there's actually people pulling plastic bottles out of bins.
There's earning possibilities there.
Yeah.
You can go and pick a litter verge in Scotland quite easily, and you could be making 30 quid an hour easily from picking bottles up if you could get a 20 pence reward.
But the gas thing about it was, I heard one of the leading authorities within Ireland from the Waste Association, and he was giving out because their revenues were down so much from the consumers doing this and the government taking this action, and they were kind of like, they were not happy, like, we're out of pocket on this one. So but at the end of the day,
yeah, no, I think if you've not got a household collection, then it's for recycled materials, then it's a good thing. I think the challenge we've got in the UK is most households actually have a collection for recycle. They've got that collection. So what you're almost doing is you're almost making it more difficult for public to recycle. Yes, you're going to get people having, if you like, earning opportunities by picking up bottles from the road verge, and it'll cut down a bit of littering. But my view in litter is we shouldn't be dropping litter in the first place. It's just, to me, it's don't get me on that rant.
Talk to me about why is it that construction companies don't engage with companies like yourself, and as part of the overall project, that let's bring Albion in to do a workshop with us on how we can maximize our efficiency of waste and have a whole strategy for waste. Why does that not happen?
I think there's been various iterations. In the past, particularly south of the border in England, they used to have construction waste management plans. They were sort of mandatory and so on, and that put a bit of drive and focus in it. But I think it's, yourself, these construction projects is very focused on delivery of the project. The waste is almost felt as a, and sometimes it's done well, but other times it's a bit of a byproduct. So it's getting that buy-in and awareness, and I think the challenge, what most organisations do is they view their cost of waste management in terms of how much their skip disposals cost them, but the reality is cost them 9 or 10 times that amount, because so it's the value of the product you've actually bought and now you're thrown out, that because you've not stored it properly or damaged it or done whatever. It's the value of just that time for staff to fill that skip, the PPE required for them handling the waste, moving the stuff around the site and all the rest. So they estimate that the actual disposal cost is a tenth of the overall cost of what's actually cost that organisation. And I think if you started factoring these costs in, companies would maybe be a bit more aware of where there's opportunities to save money.
Hi guys, as you're enjoying this podcast, I just wanted to take a few seconds to let you know about my company, Coyle Group. We're not just another safety recruitment agency. We're your partners in building a safer future. With over 25 years of experience and more than 1 million hours of safety work completed, our mission is clear. Provide top-tier health and safety contractors tailored to the unique needs of your project. We also carry out on-site construction audits. From wind energy to power stations, utilities and engineering projects, our global reach and specialised expertise ensures your operations are not just compliant, but exemplary. For more information on how ensuring safety and sustainability of your products using our team of HSE contractors, visit coyle-group.com or click on the show notes or video description now. I've also put a booking link into the description for you to click and have a one-to-one conversation with me. Now, back to the podcast. Enjoy and see you soon.
Yeah, like even the footprint of the amount of trucks up and down the road, because guys aren't ordering the right size skip, like it's mind-boggling in terms of, a skip will never be empty for too long on any site, and I think that's where the problem is, really, isn't it? It's that just fill it and get it gone, as opposed to fill it with what, and why are we ordering so much plasterboard and then we're dumping it in wherever we're dumping it or whatever else. Where's the ticket items that if you were to come into I'm the Gaffer construction site today, what would you be looking for?
Well, see, to be honest, like I used to, when I ran landfill sites, I always used to go on about what I called housekeeping, because we were a very regulated sector, and I was always, see, if you drive in the gate and the place looks organised, your regulator would give you a much easier time than if it was mayhem. And you know yourself, you look at construction sites and you look at it and think, yeah, that's well organised, it's well structured, it's well laid out. They're probably doing it, pretty well. It's the sites you go in and you see, pile of half done concrete sitting there and this and that, and and they're the ones that are probably wasting, big quantities of material just by, improper storage and not using the supplies they're buying in.
Yeah, like I'm thinking QS it really is a QS issue, isn't it, as well? Like that they're not going out doing the evaluations and saying, okay, well, what are we leaving off the site here? Like, so, because the problem is nobody's going to go rooting through a skip to try and find out what waste is being dumped. Really, are they, though? In fairness,
but you know what? That is what you need to do. If you want to make a point, that is what you need to do. You need to turn up a site and say, right, we're going to tip this skip out and actually see what's in it. And you can do a very basic, what you would call a waste composition analysis, and you would go through it and work out what's there. So the classic example of this, and I'm going to take you way off construction to say clinical waste. And the reason I'm going to do that, so we have a thing called orange bag stream, and so anything sort of infectious within the hospital goes into an orange bag stream. So in terms of pricing, generally waste is probably a couple of £100 a ton, say. Orange bag waste will be £400 or £500 a ton, and then stuff that goes in clinical waste boxes over £1,000 a ton. The stuff in the orange bags, it's estimated that 60 or 70% of that stuff is not actual clinical waste. The saving across the NHS would be massive. Now, the same principle applies across almost any sector. That by putting the waste in the right place, you can actually save yourself a lot of money. And that's the challenge construction companies have got is thinking of their main waste streams, and how do we segregate? How do we, in some ways, construction is relatively straightforward. You're producing a bit of wood, probably. You're probably producing a bit of scrap metal. You've possibly got some inerts there, and there's various waste streams. But it's how do you get that segregation working? And that's totally down to what you said, the training and education for staff.
Yeah, but there's a behavioural issue. 100% agree. It is a behavioural issue. But then, look at the waste companies, and like predominantly, as far as I know anyway, a lot of the skips are yellow in colour, so they just dump off a skip. Like there's no, like if the waste companies can, I'm not having a go with the waste companies, but if the waste companies had like a green skip for a certain, you know, a yellow skip for a certain, and whatever else, they don't.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. But the bottom line is, waste companies are making money out of people being lazy about their waste. That's the bottom line. That's the reality. You know, so if you think your skip company is going to help you save money, it's the wrong person. You know, is somebody like ourselves coming in and doing the waste audit and saying, like, this is what you need to do with that waste. You know, because at the end of the day, the skip company's interested in selling you skips, and if they know you're putting lots of inert in there and they can get that disposed for a couple of quid a ton when they're charging you a good few £100 a ton, then that's what they're going to do. But and interestingly, I was in a call this morning about with some of the waste contractors in Scotland, and we're actually getting to the stage where the regulations they're facing and some of the distances they're having to travel for waste, we're not far off being, for an 8-yard skip, being £500 or £600 a skip. And that's and I was saying to them at the time, I said, you as a waste sector, as the skip companies, need to start educating wider industry about the pressures you're facing and why you're getting up to that sort of price. And a lot of it's down to, you know, stripping out things like plasterboard. You know, we've got pops and furniture. I don't know if you've heard about this with persistent organic pollutants in furniture. So that material needs to be segregated. It needs to be incinerated because it's got basically the fire retardant they're putting in it is what they call a forever chemical that you're not allowed to put in environment. You're not allowed to put in landfill. So you've got to destroy it in incineration. So there's you know, we've in Scotland we've got the landfill ban coming up. We've got to incinerate everything. So that means waste produced in the north of Scotland is having to get shipped all the way down to Central Belt. So immediately you're adding on cost all the time. That you're getting to a stage where a skip's going to cost £500 or £600.
Yeah, and I think I heard stories of waste being shipped off to the likes of Amsterdam for incineration, stuff like that. That's literally the system can't deal with the volume.
So that much of quite a bit of Europe has got, you know, they've had incineration capacity for a number of years, and some of the plants have got capacity, and particularly in Northern Europe, quite a lot of the plants are used for what they call district heating schemes, where they provide the heating to the housing in the town. So sometimes what they want to do is stockpile waste in the summer, because then the big demand is through the winter. So that's how they work. And there is a way of, you know, you shred up the waste, you bale it, and you almost do like a silage wrap on waste. So it just looks like bales of silage, and that's what gets
Fermenting
shipped
away.
out to. Yeah, no, it does ferment away, and if it sits for too long, the flies will get to it. The flies always get to it.
Yeah,
and it will smell. If it sits for too long, it will smell. So
yeah. I had the I don't know if you call it pleasure, but I did visit an incineration plant once, and I didn't think that you could get that many flies in one place. It was incredible. It's like oh my god, you know, crazy.
Okay.
But
Well, that's well. I think one of the, sorry to interrupt. One of the things people, you know, when I run landfill sites, you know, if somebody said we've got a breakdown and instead of taking 100 trucks a day, you need to take 150 trucks a day, I could do that quite easily. I could put an extra dozer on, I could put an extra machine on, and I could handle that. It'd be difficult, but I would handle it. The problem with these waste energy plants is that they're designed to run 24/7, 365 days a year, but they've got an absolute maximum tonnage. And it's not even a tonnage, they've got a maximum calorific value they can put through the plant. So if you try and put a lot of plastic material, which has got high calorific value, you get less tons through. So if they have a 2-week breakdown that's unplanned, they've suddenly got 2 weeks of backlog.
wow.
And they can't suddenly
ramp
go
up.
double as quick. They've only got one rate, and that's the real change. So what's happened in the UK is we've shifted more and more to incineration, and we did have a situation recently that 3 or 4 of the main plants in Scotland all went down at the same time.
Oh, jeez.
Some planned, some unplanned.
Wow.
And because we're not relying on landfill as much, there's not as many companies developing landfill.
Yeah.
So then there's pressure on, are they going to be able to stay open because they're not getting enough revenue through?
It's one way for a politician to get a politician to stand up is, my waste hasn't been collected at the door. Like, wow, talk about sending a signal to the local politician to stand up. Like, I've seen it in the UK and I've seen it in Ireland, where the waste companies had there was a problem, and the waste company said, that's fine, we'll just stop and let's see what happens tomorrow when stuff isn't picked up. Like,
yeah. But I run the waste company, sometimes you be getting a lot of flack from locals and residents and all the rest. And I used to keep saying to them, it's not our waste. It's not, we're managing this waste on your behalf. We're not producing the waste. It's society in general. And going back to way back earlier, you were talking, producers have a big bit responsibility in here, particularly, taking away from construction to consumerism. I did something the other day that I bought. Very rarely do I eat McDonald's, and I went in to get McDonald's. The packaging from my McDonald's was 92 grams from that one meal. Do you know how many McDonald's are sold in a year in the UK? 1.4 billion. That packaging equates to 130,000 tons of waste. And if you take that current disposal rates, that's 20 million quid in cost.
that is absolutely insane.
And
That is
that's
absolutely insane.
multiply that up with McDonald's, Burger King, KFC.
Yeah.
That's why we've got a waste problem.
And the other thing about it is it's fast food, for inverted commas. So like it's not as if it's something that's it's turning around. It's gone. The bins are just full the whole time. Sure, if you come out of any of those fast food restaurants and the bins are just overflowing.
No, absolutely. So if you think that what I actually did was, it was 94 grams of waste. The vast majority, in fairness to them, was cardboard that could be recycled in my recycling bin. But the reality is the fast food industry did. So if you go to McDonald's, you either put in a litter bin at McDonald's. The reality is that's not getting recycled. It ends up in a litter bin at the council. That's not getting recycled. And then how many people are like me and actually take it home and put it in the right bin? So out of that, 130,000 tons of waste, how much of that has actually been recycled? Probably very little.
And that's the thing. Nobody knows. Like, there's only a small little circle knows what is getting recycled. There is a real lack of education in terms of, as you said earlier, once it's away from me, then it's somebody else's problem or the waste company's problem. But as you said yourself, the waste company is only interested in profit and margin in terms of where they're going at. Like, at the end of the day, how many skips can I get out of one truck in one day that's out in the field or collected or whatever, and how many drivers do I need to and then to do that? And then there's the obvious one where you see a guy coming back to a waste facility with empty skips, and he might have 6 or 7 of them stacked in the back of the truck. From a safety point of view, insane. Absolutely insane.
The safety record of the waste industry is probably another topic for you, and it's not particularly good. But I think one of the things I in terms of recycling, I think quite often people sort of don't quite understand what we mean by recycling. So quite often what we're doing in the UK is we are collecting single material types for further processing. So if we collect paper and cardboard, it will go to, it's what you were talking about earlier, what I call the waste journeys. So that these bales of paper and cardboard will go to a paper mill and that'll be turned back into paper. Similarly, the wood would be probably chipped up and goes into a wood chip or a biomass burner or whatever. Plastic's much more complex because there's loads of different plastic types. And quite often what we're doing in the UK is baling it up and we're sending it overseas for recycling. But what you need to drive a recycling market is people that are prepared to buy the recycled product. So if you remember back to recycled paper used to be pretty poor quality and nobody bought it. So you're not, you can't recycle if nobody's going to buy the end product, or if it's much more expensive than the raw material. So effectively, the people that recycle paper are competing with a worldwide market paper producers. That's what they're competing with. So their hands are tied. And I think this is where the construction industry can be a bit more open-minded to actually using recycled material, particularly in things like aggregates and so on. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of really good wash plants, and there's an Irish company, I think they're Northern Irish, this company called CDE that puts in a lot of wash plants where you take soils and aggregates from sites to wash it, and they produce aggregates and sand and so on. 100% recycled, but these companies are struggling to get construction companies to actually use that material because it doesn't fit their spec, and it does fit the spec because it's all got the test and all the rest. But at the end of the day, they're cautious of it.
Yeah,
and it's things like that you need to be a bit more
innovative,
a bit more proactive.
Yeah, and innovative. Like there has been no real innovation in terms of waste. Would you agree? In terms of something that's going to make a difference within the construction industry, like it is very behavior led, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the closest innovation is taking your aggregates, your soils, your site clearance material, cleaning it up and producing aggregate. But one of the problems they've got is 50% comes out as what we call a filter cake, which is almost like a clay material, and it's really hard getting uses for that material. So spent lots of money in this equipment, millions of pounds in equipment. Yes, to make good aggregate that competes with a quarry, but they're left with this byproduct that they're struggling for a thing for. And I think if the construction company helped drive that market for the use, they would get the benefit because they'd get the material off their sites cheaper, and they'd probably get the recycled aggregates back, at a better price than virgin. But there needs to be a bit of working together to make it happen.
What's your thoughts on segregation of waste within the construction site itself, as opposed to, in fairness, you see well laid out structures of, this is where timber goes, this is where steel and metal goes, this is where the wire goes, etc., etc. But is there any sort of innovation beyond that can be done on the site, other than visually looking at stuff going into different bins? Is there something people could do in terms of segregating waste?
I think it's you can take this to the nth degree, but it's also thinking about where's the big numbers, where's the big tonnages, and where's the big saving opportunities. I would say that's where we're at the moment. That we're not getting these these easy hits. Go for the easy hits, and then start looking at the harder to reach materials. I think again using a household waste example of that. So the moment most of the UK, the councils would accept what I call hard plastics, which is plastic bottles and plastic boxes, that type of thing. So they'll recover that and they'll recycle that. Soft plastic is, there's hardly a plant in the UK will recycle it, so there's hardly any point collecting it. What's the point in doing it if there's not a market? So concentrate on the things, the things we can do at the moment. The class, like we've done on household waste, we've done waste compositional work. Over 70% of what is in what I would call a residual bin, which is basically a landfill incineration bin, should not be in that bin. It should be in the recycling bins. So we're failing to get that message out to the public that you're not actually doing that good a job at the recycling bit. You think you're doing it, but you're not actually doing that good a job. So we've got a lot of work to do in terms of the education piece.
And can you give us some case studies of stuff that you did with Albion, with construction companies, that made a difference?
So simple things like we're talking about, literally just doing waste audits, just going around the site, looking at skips, looking at bins, what's in it, getting them to spread the waste out, looking at it, quantifying it, weighing it, and working out, right, 3/4 of that skip's wood waste. The other third's stuff from your canteen. Let's put a wheelie bin in for your canteen waste and keep that skip for wood. And things like that. But I think the challenge you're up against with construction, that works if that's a job that's going to run on for 2 years, and it's going to be the same waste streams that's coming through. If it's a job that's only going to be there for a month, is it worth the effort?
Yeah, I know. But I'm just thinking of a drywaller. He doesn't care or she doesn't care when they're ripping off plasterboard and sort of putting up a wall. They just want to get the wall finished and done.
Yeah.
They're not quantifying anything like that. It really is. It really probably is a QS type scenario that they need to be measuring this as part of their KPIs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The stuff we have done that is quite effective is that what I would call waste awareness training, and that's all about going through what I've talked about briefly is the waste hierarchy. The easiest way to not spend money in waste is not to produce the waste in the first place. Now that might seem really really simplistic, but when you actually start thinking about it and diving into it a wee bit, you can find things. And it's one of these things that if you have a group of 10 construction managers in a room and you challenge them to think about things, they will think of things. They will come up with ideas.
I also think there's a place for a safety professional on the job. There's a place for an engineer on the job. There generally isn't an environmental person on a job unless it's a really big project. But there generally isn't a waste officer or environmental officer. And it does need policing, doesn't it? Like I know, like there's the behavioural and the education and whatever else, but you do need to be policing it as well. Would you agree?
No, totally and utterly. We do that type of stuff in some of the bigger jobs, as you say, but you're right, the smaller jobs don't. And is it fair to add it on to health and safety professionals' job? Possibly. But it's building up their expertise in terms of knowledge, and there's lots of very dubious things that go on environmentally that claim to be good for the environment in terms of waste, that you look at them and think, that's just a company trying to sell a product. The classic is taking a bite to regular consumers, like a compostable coffee cup. Now, if that compostable coffee cup isn't ending up in composting, what's the point in paying double the amount for that compostable coffee cup? It's like, yes, in theory, it's a really good idea, but if it's not ending up in the right place, it's like, it's back to my example of McDonald's. Vast majority of that material was cardboard and could be recycled, but if it's not ending up in the recycling, yeah.
Alasdair, I'm going to throw a few curveballs at you if you don't mind.
Have I depressed you? Sorry.
No, I did introduce you as a geek, so you definitely come across. And I know I really appreciate you coming on the show because it is a topic that probably doesn't get enough air in terms of podcasting and in terms of getting the message out there to people. Like, you can make money out of having good waste management is what I'm getting out of this.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking,
and don't overcomplicate it. Do it as basic as how many skips have we taken off this site, and go out and have a look and see what's in that skip.
Yeah.
And generally, you'd be quite horrified what's actually in that skip, because it's probably caught. And then if you do find stuff in the skip, go and find out how much that costs you to buy.
Yeah, and then go and find the people that actually put that in the skip in the first place.
Absolutely.
And have a word. Here, pal.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because ultimately, that's what I was thinking when you were talking there, was like, this has been paid for. This is coming out of hard cash out of the company. You know what I mean? Then we're all talking about, there isn't enough money on this job, or we can't take on extra labor because we don't have the budget for it. And you're looking at stuff money that's in a skip that's going out the door, pure and utter loss of revenue, basically, going straight out the door. And that's what I'm getting out of the podcast here, is that there's an opportunity here if people want to embrace it in the right manner, that they can actually, be ahead of their competitors by having good waste management within the construction sector. And then where do you can, as far as I can see, where do you take it next? Then, as you say, go back and start talking to your suppliers and your producers and your manufacturers and saying, look, our buildings are a certain size. We don't need an oversize of the steel or the plasterboard or whatever you're giving them. That's not to say they're going to change their production lines, but at least have the conversation.
No, absolutely. It's a bit like thinking, I know at the landfill side, we used to get our hydraulic oil and our stuff like that in I don't know, 25-litre drums. And we're like, why don't we just get a 1,000-litre tank and get one supply a year and put a pump on it? And the guys loved it better because they weren't carting these drums around the site and they weren't rolling about in the wind, and they took their jug over, they filled it up with their hydraulic oil for the machine or whatever it was. And it's thinking things like that.
Yeah, thinking outside the box, but it should be, I don't know, it should be part of your overall strategy for building the project. Doesn't matter whether it's an extension or whether it's a house build or whether it's a plant. Like it's the same theory, same logic.
Yeah, I think in fairness to some construction companies do it well. They do, they focus on it. But I think in the whole, it's not high priority. It's not as high priority as I think it could. And the obvious thing when you're saying it, it ticks the boxes in terms of environmental sustainability, gets you up that all that stuff. And it's easy to, once you've put a wee system in, it's actually easy to track. It's easy to track progress. It's easy to demonstrate progress. It's if you want to improve your ESG ratings, waste is a perfect
easy
one.
It is. Yeah. A few curveballs for you then. Knowing what you know now, Alasdair, what would you do different? And that can be in life. I'm not talking about business. Knowing what you know now, what would you do different?
That's a good question. Would I do anything?
Stop in your tracks there, buddy.
I don't think I would do anything different. I think my wrong turn. I often said to people I've had a few wrong turns in my life. Is that the first one was that taking on the Shanks McEwen job at less pay. That was my first wrong turn. My second wrong turn was when I left Bar Environmental running landfill sites, I went to an incineration company that was just a disaster. And I lasted there 4 months. So that was a wrong turn, but that's what made me set up Albion Environmental.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's been a particular wrong turn. I think probably a bit of frustration that the sector's not moved and progressed as much as I sit in meetings. I'm now the old fart that's sitting in the back saying, "Yeah, we were talking about this 20 years ago."
Yeah, still not sorted. Yeah,
which is not maybe a good sign. Maybe I just need to retire now. I'm not quite that age.
Tell me something interesting about you that not many people would know.
Well, that not many people. I was saying something interesting is I run ultra races, but lots of people know about that because I talk about that a lot. I suppose probably a lot of people don't know what I mentioned earlier, that I used to be a ski instructor and I used to be a windsurfing instructor.
Yeah, very cool. And the running is ultra running, is it?
Yeah, I do a wee bit of ultra running. So
wow,
stupid long.
What kind of distances are you talking like?
What's that?
What kind of distances are you talking?
So an ultra is anything over a marathon distance, but the longest I've done is 100, and I think it's about 105 miles, which was the Arc, which was the one round Cornwall. Which one a Radio 2 presenter or someone did. It came a bit famous the year I did it because some presenter on radio was doing it. I can't remember his name.
Wow.
Longest I've done in stage races is I've done 2 stage races. So there's one that goes from Conway to Cardiff in Wales, and it was done over 6 days, and it went over every damn mountain in Wales. So I'm not sure if I like Wales or not anymore.
That stuff goes through the night and everything, isn't it? Like
the stage race doesn't. But if you're doing a 100-mile race, yes, you'll be through the night. Yep. Wow. There's something about that. There is something about running through the night and seeing the sunrise again.
Yeah.
I've done it probably in my life. I've done it about 10 or 15 times, and there's something about magical about that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
You can have that all day. I'm definitely Alasdair, if people want to get in touch with you, I know for sure if I want a waste man in my corner, you're definitely the man. How do people get in touch with you? Or, I'm sure you're open to people contacting you or whatever.
Easily through my LinkedIn, Alasdair Meldrum, or Albion. If you search my name, you'll find me. We've also got the Rubbish Talk podcast, which from this week goes out Thursday at 4:00, and it's actually now going out weekly. If anybody's interested in following that, just download from your usual platform. So that's where we do chat about waste issues. Not construction related all the time, but dealing with waste is dealing with waste. Same principles apply. So that's probably the easiest way. So, and I do have a Rubbish Talk TikTok account actually, which seems to be getting people a bit excited with some mad comments. But
brilliant.
I'm trying my best not to read all the comments, but some of them are slightly frustrating.
That's the one thing about social media. You just can't take it personal. You just can't.
No.
Alasdair, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. It's a credit to you, and well done on the success with Albion. But also, I took a lot out of the podcast, and really thanks for sharing some great insights on how people can manage their waste better. And I definitely would love to have you on the show again in the future. If you'd come back. Thanks very much, Alasdair.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Hello, Gaffers. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. We love every one of the guests that we have, but in order to bring on more great guests, we'd love to build the channel with you. So hit the subscribe, hit the like button, and let's create a really great community where we bring in better and better guests for you to deliver great content and great pieces of information that you can take back into your business.